ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
She was warm, funny, every student's favourite teacher.
No one ever suspects a woman could do such a thing, especially one with kids.
The parents trusted her too.
I felt that the school was a safe place. If anything was to happen, there would be somebody there.
But it was all a smokescreen.
She was brainwashing us from the start.
The Favourite, a 5-part investigation from Background Briefing. Search Background Briefing on the ABC Listen app or wherever you get your podcasts.
The Albanese government is about to release a new carbon emissions target, dumping the 2030 ambition for a new 2035 goal. But how much of the process is about the climate and how much is pure politics? Today, ABC TV's finance expert Alan Kohler on this week's dire climate risk assessment and what our new target will really achieve. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily.
More than 1.5 million people in Australia are at risk of rising sea levels by 2050, according to Australia's first National Climate Risk Assessment.
The grim document's been released days ahead of the federal government committing to its emissions target for 2035.
And it's warning we're going to be seeing more floods, cyclones, heat waves, droughts and bushfires in the years ahead.
Climate Change Minister Chris Bowen admits that it makes for pretty confronting reading.
One thing that is very clear from this climate assessment is that our whole country has a lot at stake.
The idea that you can just ignore climate change and pretend it goes away or say we'll do nothing until the 2040s and then we'll get around to it is just not on. And this report reinforces that.
Alan, the latest climate risk assessment for Australia, let's face it, it's pretty dire, isn't it? It's dreadful reading.
Yeah, it is, of course. Trouble is with it, in my view, is that you can't, it doesn't really say what the odds are of the various scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's providing the scenarios and saying how terrible it all might be, but it's not telling us how likely really it is. It's very difficult to figure it out. It's a very comprehensive report, and they divide it into various types of risks of the community, of financial and so on. And then they kind of say, well, there's moderate and high risk and severe and so on. But as you read it, you've got to go back to the sort of legend to find out what each means. And it doesn't really tell you what the likelihood is of these things. So they give 3 scenarios, 1.5 degrees of warming, 2 degrees and 3 degrees. Mm-hmm. And they say that we've got 1.2 degrees of warming now. And most of the scientists say that we're heading for 2 degrees, whatever happens, more or less.
Well, as you say, Alan, it was a comprehensive report, but what then, in your view, would have made it better, if you like?
I mean, I just think it'd be better if they said 30% chance of this and 50% chance of that and so on. Because then, then people could, the government particularly, could kind of plan around that. The trouble is that the government is able now to say, well, it all looks, possibly terrible, but let's be optimistic and let's do what we can to prevent it.
I would say to people, let's be clear-eyed about the challenges. Let's be realistic about the threats. But also, let's be optimistic about the future. Because if we take action, we can avoid the worst of the impacts.
And the trouble with that is that nothing Australia does can prevent it, of course. Now, a lot of people, climate deniers and so on, say, well, nothing Australia can do can prevent it, so therefore we shouldn't do anything. And, people like Andrew Hastie is sort of that kind of in that camp. And the trouble with that is it's like throwing a coffee cup out the car window as you're driving along, saying, well, it's only one cup, it's fine, but you're a litter bug, right? You can't do it. And so even though Australia's got 1% of emissions, we've got to do our bit, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you mentioned hasty. Of course, this is so political, isn't it? We've got Liberal and National MPs at the moment threatening to quit if the coalition doesn't dump plans for net zero.
If Susan Lee, though, supports net zero by 2050, where does that leave you?
That leaves me without a job. I've nailed my colours to the mast, Gary. Like, if I go out with the tide in 2.5 years, that's great.
A lot of this is about the politics of this.
Well, that's right, and that's the problem. It's become, the whole thing has become a matter of politics, which means that, if one side says something, then the other side has to disagree with it. And it all then becomes a matter of, politically, what can you get away with, So the Prime Minister is going to announce the 2035 target this week, and it's not a matter of, what's the right target. It's going to be a matter of what he can get away with without being, pilloried by either side if he can, or at least if he's pilloried, at least it's by both sides, and then he's okay. These targets, the 2035 targets, were agreed upon by everybody at the Paris conference in 2015. And they signed up for the Paris Agreement, and everyone agreed to, every 5 years, come up with new targets. And so we're doing ours this week.
Yeah. So just remind me, though, before we move on, Alan, what is our current target? That actually relates to 2030. Doesn't it? And are we actually on track to meet it?
So the 2030 target is 43% reduction on 2005 levels. It was originally, back when Paris was signed, the baseline was 1990. Australia changed that to 2005 because our emissions went up and peaked in 2005, and you get bigger reductions from 2005 than you do from 1990. So we changed to 2005, well, Kevin Rudd did actually, just to make it look better. And then a few other countries followed suit. But so there's a mixture of, some countries used 2005 as their baseline, some used 1990. So it's absolutely all over the place. Anyway, we're saying by 2030, we'll reduce by 43% on 2005. And are we on track to that? I don't think so. I mean, it's 5 years to go, and I did a little chart looking at the reductions and doing a linear extension of the current reduction rate, and I reckon by 2030 we'll be 36% below 2005 levels.
Okay, so we've got this target at the moment, which it looks like we won't meet. So, Alan, now let's have a look at what this new target might actually be. That's, as we said, going to be announced this week. There are a number of figures that are being suggested, I suppose you could say, to the government right now, aren't there?
Everyone's got an opinion about this. But the Climate Change Authority is the body that models it and provides advice to the government on this. They put out a consultation report in which they said that between 65 and 75% is doable. So everyone naturally, particularly all those in favour of net zero by 2050, everyone's jumped on the 75%, said, well, let's go for 75%. And the Business Council has put out a paper modelling various scenarios of 50%, 60 and 70%. So look, New Zealand's is 51%. Canada's is 55, I think. Norway's at 77%. But that's from 1990, not 2005. UK is also between 70 and 75%, but also from 1990.
America, of course, has completely wiped its hands of this, hasn't it? Of this whole process.
Yeah, they're out.
They're out.
They've given up entirely.
Okay, well, Alan, let's have a look then a bit more at these percentages, because you say if we set it at 75% below 2005 levels by 2035, that would mean that we would have to introduce a carbon tax. Just explain that.
Oh, well, it's, the higher you go, the more difficult it is to meet. Australia is a fossil fuel country, and, meeting any of these targets is going to be very difficult, particularly since we're still approving fossil fuel export projects such as the North West Shelf massive North West Shelf gas project that was announced last Friday.
Australia's biggest gas project, Woodside's North West Shelf, has received final approval from Federal Environment Minister Murray Watt to extend operations through to 2070.
It has taken some time to reach this final decision, and I think people should take comfort from that we've taken this seriously.
So these things, although the burning of the gas in other countries, it's an export project, other countries will burn it. The production of the gases also creates a lot of emissions, so that there's a lot of what I call fugitive emissions from the actual production of the gas. It's a hugely emissions-intensive process. The only way really that Australia, I think, can do this, and I've spoken to a lot of scientists and experts on the field who say that really Australia can only do it with a carbon tax.
And that's putting a price on greenhouse gas emissions, basically.
Yeah, that's right. So, everything with carbon in it costs more, which would sort of accelerate the whole process because it would increase the price of anything with carbon in it, such as coal-fired power and petrol and so on.
Okay, but what about if we went lower than 75%? What if we did what New Zealand's doing around, what is it, 51%?
Well, I think that's quite doable without a carbon tax. I mean, the Climate Change Authority is the one modelling all this, and they presumably in their report to the government have provided sort of modelling advice on the various levels. I mean, bearing in mind that these targets that Australia does will make no difference to the climate, but it's essentially a political number. But I mean, it sort of has to do with, will people accept the number in Australia or not? And the Prime Minister has to balance between those who are, really worried about climate change and those who are not worried at all. And so he's got to try and strike a balance there.
I think I read, Alan, that if we went for, say, 65% by 2035, that would mean we would need to halve our current emissions. That's within 10 years. That's a big ask, isn't it?
It certainly is. I mean, and we're doing the easy things now. I mean, everyone's putting solar panels on their roof and a lot of people are buying a battery now to go with that, and a lot of people are buying electric cars. So there's lots of easy things, but the hard things are making cement, and at this stage, nobody's really figured out how to do that without emissions, and shipping and aeroplanes. I mean, everyone's still flying all over the place and burning jet fuel, so difficult things are not being done at all.
Give me your prediction then. What do you think the government will land at in terms of this figure?
I've absolutely no idea.
Okay.
I'm sorry. No, I can't. I mean, I just don't know. I mean, I personally, I think that the government should be focusing all of its attention on adapting to it, to the actual climate change, which is now going to happen. Like with America out and China still building tons of coal-fired power stations, we're going to reach 2 degrees, right? So the government should say, okay, it's going to be 2 degrees. What does that mean? And they should start to get ready for it. And they're doing a lot in that respect. I mean, Chris Bowen put out a national adaptation report at the same time as the risk assessment. And it's kind of very worthy and full of words and, it's very long. But basically the issue is insurance. The problem is that insurance is going to become prohibitive. A lot of houses in Australia won't be able to be insured at all. And for a lot of other houses, possibly half the country, insurance is going to become really dear. And so, we've got to hear from the government, I think, as to what they're going to do about that. What's the plan? Are they going to become the insurer of last resort? Are they going to provide some sort of subsidy to help, as we do with Medicare? What's the plan? We had the first meeting, Kyoto Protocols, in 1997, and, emissions have done nothing but rise since then. So, it's definitely going to happen. So the only question is, how bad is it going to be? Is it going to be just terrible, or is it going to be catastrophic?
Alan Kohler is ABC TV's finance expert. This episode was produced by Jessica Wukyanov. Audio production by Cinnamon Nippard. Our acting supervising producer is Sydney Peat. I'm Sam Hawley. Thanks for listening.